Now, this month we are on a mission to get the whole of Northern Ireland reading. It's all part of the One Book NI campaign. We're going to find out more about that in just a second. And we're joined in the studio by award-winning playwright, poet and novelist Barney Norris. Barney, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm feeling very fortunate to be here as part of the One Book NI campaign, actually.
So we're all dying to know, what is the One Book NI campaign?
So this is a new initiative from Libraries NI, which is designed to get as many people as possible in Northern Ireland reading the same story and connecting through that shared experience of reading a book, hopefully getting together, talking about a book, talking about why it's terrible. I could say that 'cause it's by me this year. And exploring storytelling together through events, live events at libraries. I'm spending this week going around libraries across Northern Ireland talking about the book and having fruit thrown at me, whatever people think is appropriate. But over the whole of this month, hopefully, what will happen is that people will be able to pick up the book in any library in Northern Ireland. They'll be able to download ebooks or audiobooks from onebookni.co.uk and read Turning for Home, which is my second novel, and hopefully get together and talk about that story.
And it's great to get people back into libraries again, because there's probably people out there who haven't been in a library in years because they're getting their books online, they're reading the ebooks and stuff. And
the role of the library has changed so much in certainly my lifetime. The information revolution, meaning that everyone can get things at their fingertips, everyone can get things on their phone, but that doesn't for a moment take away the importance of a social centre, a place where everybody can gather, everybody can feel part of a community of readers and a community of people who are interested in the world. And libraries are, I think, totally revitalised over the last few years as a result of thinking about how do we do this, how do we offer exciting curated ideas like this and say, oh, you should try this, you might hate this, that's a really cool thing to do. And I think this campaign's an example of the way that libraries can really help people come together.
So the big thing we're trying to do, we're trying to get people reading and talking about what they've been reading as well. Of course, people do this, they watch TV shows over the weekend, they come into work on a Monday, they're talking about TV shows, but this can happen with books as well, can't it?
Water cooler conversations, exactly. This is the idea, is that when you're, skiving off emails, having coffee at about 11 o'clock, we all talk about the TV at the weekend or the football at the weekend, but actually if everybody's read the same book, that's a great way of getting into a different kind of conversation, because the thing that books do that sort of no other art form does is they last for ages. There's loads of stuff in them. You read a book, there's so much more story. I write plays as well, and you can fit more in a book.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to explore, a lot to discuss. And if the book's interesting, then hopefully people might find my book interesting. We'll see. Then there's a lot to get your teeth into.
So Turning for Home, that's your latest novel, isn't it?
It is the latest novel, yeah.
Tell us the story behind this.
So Turning for Home is the story of a birthday party in a house in Hampshire in England. A guy called Robert is having an 80th, and it's the first time he's held his birthday party without his wife there. She passed away during the previous year, and he's probably having his last big party for the whole family. At the same time, the book's other narrator, who's a young woman by the name of Kate, is coming to this party in an attempt to reconnect with her family, having been ill over the last few years with anorexia nervosa. The day is overturned and disrupted by the news that Gerry Adams has been taken in for questioning over the disappearance of Jean McConville, a story which arose out of the Boston Oral History Project. Yeah. This happened in April and May 2014, and was the most seismic, shocking thing to follow in the news that this was happening. I followed it myself and then found myself reading more and more about the Boston Oral History Project, which was an attempt to create an archive of interviews with people who had been combatants in the Troubles. And I thought it was the most extraordinary, important, profoundly brilliant cause, an attempt to tell the story of a piece of history that's so central to these islands, but also to the wider world, and that offers so many lessons about conflict and trauma and what it does to communities and what it does to societies and how we should coexist together. So the Boston Oral History Project struck me as the thing everybody should be talking about, which is really why I'm glad it's part of this campaign.
I'm sure there's people watching this who have maybe started to write something or are thinking about starting to write something and don't maybe know how to go about it. What's the kind of best piece of advice you would give somebody who's starting off?
I think the first thing is to believe that you have a right, which is a terrifying thing to do and a very difficult thing to do. I have been reading short pieces, short stories, poems, short writings that were sent into Libraries NI as part of the One Book 2018 campaign. And it reminded me of how many brilliant writers there are in the world, some published, some not published. But I read so much great work that was sent in for One Book NI.
Yeah.
And people are talented, people have voices, people have stories, and what people don't have is a belief that someone else might want to listen, which that is very difficult to acquire because it takes maybe a bit of arrogance, maybe a bit of ego, but also it's probably about just embodying that humanistic belief that everyone's equal. So if, Dan Brown can have his book published, I share a publisher, so he's a good example because I think he probably pays for all my paperbacks or something. He sells a bit better than me. If Dan Brown can be published, I can be published because, maybe I won't ever write a story that connects like his work does with 10 million people, but actually he's a human being and I'm a human being, so that we must be the same at some level. I think that's the important step to take.
So other than Dan Brown, is there any other people who've influenced you over the years? Who else do you like?
So my serious relationship with writing started when my brother started buying me the books of John McGarren, who is really the most extraordinary novelist, words somewhat fail. He's the most extraordinary artist and example of what you can do with a life, frankly. I read his books a lot to try and learn from them. I read Kieran Carson a lot. Is the living writer who I maybe have the best time with all of the work that he makes because he writes books like Fugues. He's got a brain that's so vast and exciting. And I find him thrilling. And then I also read a lot of the novels of Edward St Aubyn, as in revisit the novels of Edward St Aubyn quite a lot, as someone who has mined their life and found poetry in darkness and found beauty in their own hinterland. I think he's another wonderful writer.
Are you planning the next book at the minute? Is there something in the pipeline?
Yeah, actually, the third novel, it's so frightening the speed at which they happen because we're still just starting to talk to people about turning for home, but I'm in fact editing my third novel, which should emerge next year. I think it will emerge next summer, which is about 18 months after Turning for Home came out, so it's not too crazy, but it feels amazing that I'm still persuading a publisher to put this stuff into print and they haven't fallen for it yet. It's cool.
Brilliant. Well, Barney, the very best of luck.
Thank you.
With that, thank you so much for joining us today. And give us the website if people want to find out more information about One Book NI.
Sure. So to find out about One Book NI and Turning for Home, you just go to onebookni.co.uk.